There are a lot of people who cavalierly laugh and joke, and some of them are serious about bombing other countries into the Stone Age. That includes Donald John Trump, who is the president of the United States currently. It is a it is a type of philosophy that's born out of might makes right. And whether you agree with another country's policies or not, I ask all of you who love your country, if you live in the United States, for example, would you be advancing that theory of bombing other nations into the Stone Age? If your country wasn't mighty and powerful, would you want your country to be bombed into the Stone Age simply because your governing philosophy and your government is different than another country? Would you want that? I think I know the answer to that. The answer is no. And one of the things that I've heard a lot is the idea of people talking about following Donald Trump lead on the idea that the Iranians have been attacking America for almost 50 years, 47 they say to be exact. But one of the things that they don't talk about, they don't put the the whole thing in context. They don't deal with the actions that cause the reaction, which is something that is fundamentally how the world works. Whether you agree with it or not, that's just the way the world works. It is foreign policy, America's foreign policy, that literally has created some of these groups that they themselves now turn around and designate as terrorist groups. People don't like the truth because the truth doesn't serve their narrative. So let's deal with the truth here, people. Let's be honest with ourselves and stop with the lies. And I know that some of you know the truth, but you refuse to deal with it because it doesn't serve your narrow interest. Has Iran lashed out at the United States? Yes. Does Iran support groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas? Absolutely, they do. But this is not a secret. They attest to that they do. And so one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Iran has never shied away from calling those groups that they support an axis of resistance. And so the question is, an axis of resistance from what? Well, it's American aggression, Israeli aggression. Because since the state of Israel was created, that is what the state of Israel has been. And the United States has twisted arms for other nations using all kinds of coercion to twist the arm of nations to recognize Israel. And one of the things that Israel has never figured out to do is to live within its borders. It has been at war from it was created in 1947. And the United States was instrumental in the creation of that state in Palestine. There's no country named Israel. The nation is Palestine. But over and contrary to the wishes of the Palestinian people, they were given the land on some excuse that God promised them the land thousands of years ago. Now, we could get into that as to whether God made that promise. We could get into who God made that promise to. And we could get into the argument of whether they are the true people that God made that promise to, but that's for another time. But as far as the Israelis are concerned, and if you notice, they never refer to themselves as Israelites or Hebrews. They refer to themselves as Israelis. As far as they're concerned, they need more land. So the strategy for Israel is to consistently and constantly be at war with its neighbors towards the goal of a greater Israel. And if that include wiping out or exterminating the Palestinians, then that's what it takes. Israel has never learned to live within its own borders. And as I said before, the conversation ought to be about whether Israel even have the right to exist in a land that people were living in. So let's call it what it is. It's a settler colony. Israel is a settler colony. It is the latest iteration of the white settler colony. Because, sorry to break it to you, but most or literally all of the Israelis in modern Israel are white people from Europe. But I just want to get back to the subject of this so-called Iranian issue, this issue of Iran, and the nonsensical notion that Donald Trump have preferred, and his followers have preferred, about, well, they hate us, they've been fighting us for 47 years. Now let's examine what caused that anger in the Iranian people. In the early 1950s, Iran was led by Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, a nationalist politician who had been appointed through Iran's parliamentary system. Legally appointed and enjoyed broad popular support. His defining policy was the nationalization of Iran's oil industry. That will get you unalived. As it did Gaddafi, as it got so many other leaders who have kowtowed to the United States and eventually are standing up for their own oil. We could talk about all of that in Africa. It has happened all over the world. Standing up for your own country and the resources that you have and nationalizing those resources. You don't need to look no further than Canada. Than Cuba. Now, it is important to note that Iran's oil industry had previously been controlled by the British Anglo-Saxon Iranian oil company that later became known as BP, a company that's still in existence today. This move triggered a major international crisis as far as the great powers were concerned. The British government, facing the loss of a critical economic asset, sought Mossadegh's removal. Sorry, it's hard to pronounce his name. When diplomatic and economic pressure failed, British intelligence MI6 partnered with the US Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to plan a covert operation to overthrow Mr. Mossadegh. In August of 1953, the CIA and MI6 executed Operation Ajax, a covert campaign involving propaganda against Mossadegh, bribery of politicians, military officers, and media figures, organization of protests and unrest in the streets, use of agents and paid mobs to destabilize Iran. It is the same thing that they're attempting today. Those same tactics are being used again with the Kurds, with these people who in Iran who got out onto the street to protest. Nobody bothered them as far as the news reporting went, until the paid agitators turned up with weapons and started shooting police officers in the streets of Iran. No country would tolerate that. And so there was bloodshed. Declassified US documents later confirmed that the coup was carried out under CIA direction and approved at the highest levels of the United States government. That's American interference. And so the question must be, to those people who think it's okay to destabilize other countries while you don't want any kind of interference in your country? What is the rationale? What is the explanation for that? How is it that outside of hubris, bravado, explain how that concept is logical? We want to know how it is that it's okay to go into other people's country and do to them what you wouldn't like them doing, anybody doing that to you, but you're going to their country to do that. How do you justify that? What's the rationale for that? Outside of hubris and arrogance, what's the rationale? And so after the initial failed attempt, a second wave of coordinated military and street actions succeeded between August 15 and 19, 1953, culminating in Mossadegh's overthrow. Around 200 to 300 people were killed in the unrest. And this is what we're seeing today. So people talk about what's happening, how much the Iranian regime has terminated, the Iranian government terminated during the upheaval that was instigated again by these powers. It's the same thing that happened in 1953 between MI6 and CIA. They don't care about the lives of the dead Iranians. What they care about is the oil, control of the oil. And Trump said it. We want the oil. The idea is to choke off China, the emerging great power, because America is diametrically opposed to a unipolar, to a multipolar world. From the 1980s, or probably even before that, from the fall of the British Empire, America has completely cornered the entire world with unipolarity. And it's now starting to fall apart, not just in a bipolar sense, but in a multipolar sense. There are great powers now emerging. China, Russia, a resurgent Russia, replacing the old Soviet Union. Nations like India, Pakistan, great powers, and even Iran. And this concept is the legitimacy of the West position. That's what mind-blowing to me, because the United States has a policy that it should control its own backyard, which is Latin America and the entire Western Caribbean, all those regions. No other power should come and have any influence in there. But again, the United States want to be in Asia to control and to coordinate and to surround nations like China and to put NATO all around Russia. That's the other sore point. Wanting to surround NATO. That's what created the Ukraine war. But they won't tell you that. They tell you how evil Vladimir Putin is. Now, I'm not here to make the case for Vladimir Putin. I'm not here to make the case for the Iranian regime. These are just publicly sourced information and a matter of fact. But this will not make sense to you. The truth will not make sense to you if you're of the belief, if you're of the belief that you can just simply take what you want by force. And even if you're that kind of character, I know you're not being real with yourself. None of you. Because not a single person in the United States would like to have somebody come up to them and take what's theirs. Come up to you and take your home, or kick you off your property, take your car, take your home, take your bank account. you wouldn't stand for that. So then tell me, why is it that you want that for other people? Why? Now let's get back to the coup in 1953. Following the coup, Prime Minister Mossadegh was arrested, tried, and placed under house arrest. For what? General Fazlollah Zahedi was installed as Prime Minister. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who had briefly fled, returned and consolidated power. While the Shah had already been monarch since 1941, the coup greatly expanded his authority, transforming Iran into a more centralized, pro-Western monarchy backed by, you guessed it, the United States. Over the next 26 years, the Shah ruled with strong US support, relying on security forces such as SAVAK to suppress opposition. The coup became a lasting symbol in Iran of foreign intervention and contributed to anti-Western sentiment that later fueled the 1979 revolution. Those of you who say, well, they've been attacking us. The actions of the Iranians in 1979 was not the beginning. You got to go further back. And if you start at 1979, excuse me, if you start in 1979 with the hostage crisis, you're not being real with yourself. You're not being honest. You're not being honest. You're cherry picking the data. You're cherry picking facts that suit you. Let's be reasonable with ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. We could go on and on and on and on and on over the last, what, 80 years, in which the United States has set up puppet regimes, has used the Central Intelligence Agency to destabilize other nations towards its own designs. The nations are too many that the United States has tried to subjugate towards its own demise. So yes, when you talk about other countries standing up and resisting, state the consequence. State the facts. I'm sorry. State the facts. Don't leave anything out. But here's a better idea. How about you just go ahead and say, hey, we believe in taking what is not ours. We believe we should take other people's oil. We believe we should take their rare earths. We should take their precious metals. We should steal their artifacts. We should steal their art. We should walk roughshod over the rest of the world and dominate. Let's say that. It's best if you say that. Because you know what? That's exactly how the United States has operated. And that's since the formation of the nation. That's how the United States have operated. And that's how Israel is operating by trying to set up Greater Israel. Say that. Say that. Friends, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, the Deep Dive TV, please give us a subscribe, like the channel, please. Leave us a comment and share the videos with your friends and relatives and your neighbors. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.